Hello.
Whistling, not it's breakfast.
It's breakfast
Yay!
time.
Hilarious.
And hello to Holly, because Holly just messaged me saying she's tuning in. So, Holly, organizer of Disrupt HR Phoenix and Tucson, joining in
Tucson.
live. Hello. It was me and Callie.
Hello.
Me and
We were
Callie.
just talking about how much we loved you before we went live.
I know,
So
right? It's
perfect
weird.
timing.
Like then it's weird how the world works. It is just us two today, Callie, because our dear friend Sam is stuck on a Maltese island without any internet. I would shed a tear, but that sounds like a pretty idyllic situation to be in. So, Sam, if you're watching this on catch up, we hate you. Insanely jealous. I
Next
hope you're having
time,
a
take
lovely
us
time.
with you.
I got a picture of her blowing up a unicorn inflatable for a swimming pool.
That's fantastic. Congrats, Sam.
I can't make HR Breakfast USA today because I'm in a unicorn donut on a pool. Come
I
on.
clearly misread the message because I was like, oh no, Sam is sick. Feel better.
Yeah, you said get well soon. I was like, you clearly misread this, but I'm not going to correct you because it's fun. Cool. What are we talking about this week, Callie?
So I'm so excited for this because originally, until you couldn't make it last week, we were going to be talking about SHRM last week and why maybe there's better ways to educate yourself. And then a bunch of dramatic things happened last week. And so it's very serendipitous that we are doing our SHRM slam today and not a week ago.
I know, right? Oh, SHRM, the gift that keeps on giving, news-wise. Probably not from industry direction-wise, but so obviously we have an equivalent here in the UK called the CIPD. So there are these, and many industries have an industry body that accredits and gives out qualifications and advice and all this kind of stuff. But we're focusing today on SHRM. Callie, is SHRM any good? As a British person, let me just put on my ignorance hat and default to my American friend and say, SHRM, what do you think?
Well, okay, so a quick question. Do you know the history of SHRM and the separation from HRCI?
No, this sounds like like an NFL to kind of merging of different franchises. What was it? The AFC and the NFC merging into the NFL.
Yeah.
Is this kind of what we're talking about?
Kind of, kind of. So I think it's interesting, especially in light of everything that's been happening in the last couple of years with these guys, to know the background. So originally, so HRCI, HR Certification Institute, is the competing body. So if you see um oh gosh, you see other credentials behind an American's name about HR, that's going to most likely be an HR certification from this other body, right? So back in the day, SHRM dramatically made a secret split from them and decided they didn't want to be underneath HRCI anymore. Um, they wanted to do their own thing. And so I'm hoping that I'm using the right terms. Now I'm worried that HRCI isn't what I want to say. But
I
anyway,
googled it and it looks like it's real, so it's definitely a thing.
so there's one, there used to be one governing body. They were the education, SHRM was the certification, and then SHRM went, we want to do our own thing. And so they came up with this plan to just kind of abruptly switch. And so when you see people with two certifications behind their name, it's usually because they were certified under one, and SHRM grandfathered a whole bunch of people to say, hey, if you sign up with us by this time, we'll automatically give you the equivalent certification with us. And so a whole bunch of people were grandfathered, and then they started doing their own thing. So people like me, I got certified with SHRM a year ago. I just have the one because I didn't take the time to certify with both of them. Now I feel bad that I'm saying the wrong thing and that I'm like incriminating my friends here. But anyway, they split. SHRM went off, did their own thing, kind of like weirdly, maliciously. This is like 10 years ago. And now they've been doing their own thing ever since. And so I say that only because them going out on their own was a little bit weird to begin with and a little bit shady and probably could have been handled in a better way. And so it's not surprising to me that SHRM has been a little bit problematic and riddled with issues because they didn't even necessarily formulate in a super kosher, politically correct kind of way. So moving forward, of course, there are people who are fans of SHRM, of course. But more and more out in the community, what I'm hearing is they're outdated. They're not giving you good information to move your career forward. A lot of times, people with big companies or big positions within large companies don't have these certifications, don't care anything about what SHRM has to say because it's so uniquely fit to their specific agenda and what they want to offer. And so, long story long, it's a perfect time to be talking about whether or not there is a good use case for this organization continuing to pay fees to them, because they haven't continued to progress. They've actually digressed. And we're actually seeing really weird, non-transparent behavior from them, like increasing the price of certification with no explanation as to why. Just saying, hey, you want to be able to come, and not certification, a membership. You want to become a member now because we're going to be increasing our prices. But there was zero information as to why. I mean, I think it's really easy with inflation and everything else to make a claim for why you need to increase your prices. So it's really funny that an organization surrounding transparency, ethics, wouldn't give transparent information about why specifically they were making that sort of change, when membership is already out of the equation for a lot of people, because it's several $100s. It's not a cheap thing to be a member of.
That's a lot. So I think there's some socio-technological factors that play into significance here of any industry body, and then we'll specifically take SHRM to task. But the number one is that any centralized institution that disseminates knowledge and advice on how to run an industry has to be able to keep up with the rate of socio-technological change. And when a company or an organization like that gets so big, it ceases to be able to do that. My university was exactly the same. I think I've told this story before. Is I was getting trained on an outdated technology in the form of mini disc when hard drives were being used to record audio.
You did.
Like, absolutely ridiculous. But there's a demonstration of an institution disseminating knowledge from boomers being able to charge for that as well seems ridiculous. So organizations like that, whether it's a university, whether it's a SHRM, any of those industry bodies where you're giving money for this kind of stuff, has to keep up with that rate of change. Now, I'm not saying it's easy, because it is incredibly difficult. The rate of change obviously is ever increasing, but it is on you to keep up, because that is what your members are paying for.
Yes.
The second thing is that, where does that body sit? So Holly correctly says it's all about money. Now, as soon as that industry body becomes a revenue generating organization that has shareholders where money needs to be made for it to be successful, all of a sudden the purpose dives off slightly, because what you have to be able to do is maintain the status quo to keep generating the revenue and profits that you've come to love and want and need. So in both of those situations, not only too big to change, but the whole system, the whole framework of how your organization is set up disables you from changing, because if you do, there'll be a downturn in revenue. And so no CEO is going to come and go, hey, let's make less money for 3 years while we figure some shit out. That will happen, because I've worked in large organizations where it doesn't happen. A CEO comes in and goes, change some stuff, like removing an E from a thing. But I'm not going to substantially change the status quo here, because it's not in my best interest to do so. Well, unfortunately, it is in the best interest of the industry for you to do so, but obviously you're not answering to them, because otherwise you wouldn't just keep on the status quo. Callie.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to verify that HRCI was what I was talking about, and it was. So yes, I got that good. But I'm with you there, right? Like, we need to be able to change and adapt. And I think one of the most anybody who studied for the SCP exam, which I feel, qualified to talk about because I just took it a year ago, knows that you're not studying to understand the industry and what you need. You're studying to pass a specific test that only has a 50% pass rate. And so, yeah, which in itself, you need
Yeah,
to have a significant amount of experience. It
it,
doesn't make any sense. And it's like they're using that as a badge of honor that like only 50% of people pass this. And it's like, yeah, but when you already are having to have a significant experience within the industry to even sit for this test, is that really what you want to do? Yeah. So I think that that's a really good anecdote for what they're doing is they're trying to create an elite system that serves them and them only by creating their own unique language that at best is, I don't even know, like maybe applicable to half the situations. Half, we'll go with half the situations that you encounter.
50%.
And I think I would really like to get into the recent scandals with them. I spoke at a Disrupt HR 2 weeks ago, and I was a little concerned that I was going to be outdated talking about their removal of equity from diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I got such a strong response because people are still livid and can't believe that they're making such crazy decisions. And so rather than saying, hey, this is how we need to support organizations and support progress within the workforce, they've decided that they would rather support antiquated ideas by stakeholders who were never invested in progressing the workforce forward in the first place.
I think there's another factor at play here as well. Hello, Dara's watching. Is that the technology democratizes knowledge? Like the whole framework of what the legal industry is the same, right? The HR and the legal industry is predicated on knowledge acquisition, retention, and then application of that, right? Now, technology for the past, I don't know, 20 years or more has made the flow of information across the world a hell of a lot easier to move around. What institutions like SHRM have to do is to try and protect that as much as they can. And like a little a knowledge goblin? No, a knowledge goblin is they have to sit there with all our knowledge and go, you have to pay to access my knowledge. You can't get it otherwise. And it's like, well, that doesn't really make any sense because the world has fundamentally changed. All it would take is someone to walk into SHRM, look at their servers, chuck it all into an AI, and boom, all of that institutional knowledge is suddenly public. Now, that would be
LinkedIn is doing that already.
Who's doing it? Who's doing it?
LinkedIn.
Oh, LinkedIn. Oh, yeah.
Stop pursuing badges. I know that they're going away anyway, but stop pursuing badges. They are stealing your intellectual knowledge for their AI.
Hey, you're one of a few experts to contribute to this. Oh yeah, go on. How many's a few? 3 million? Get out of town. But it's technology is democratizing that. So there's the technology would enable loads of experienced HR people to feed in institutional knowledge into a machine to then disseminate it to a load of people. And because it's user generated, it's updated quicker. Now there will be a failure rate in information. And guess what? There's a really good example of this somewhere. Wikipedia. Wikipedia is a thing that has democratized knowledge. I'm not saying it's 100% right all the time, but that is such a Billy Basic site. Yeah. It is core that it's like, well, all of a sudden technology is going to remove this ability. And so you can do two things. You can go with it or you can try and fight against it. And SHRM and anybody else who is an institutional body based on knowledge will try and defend it until it dies. Well, get used to it, kids, because the internet ain't going to go away for quite a while.
It certainly is changing things, though, isn't it?
The internet, right. Will it last? Email, thoughts? But a lot of this institutional stuff, and they put out stuff there. CIPD in the UK is exactly the same. Put out information about like, oh, this is how we're going to keep up with technology. It's like, well, it's taken you about 6 months to write that piece because of the huge machine that you are, and all of a sudden it's out of date. And there's probably 1 million people out there who have better thoughts than you. and you can't handle the fact that they may have better thoughts than you, better approaches, and you don't want to bring them in because ultimately you're making money out of being the knowledge goblin. So, like, it just absolutely baffles me that any industry like this would exist. The legal one is the legal industry is a little bit more protected, right? They've got bloody fortresses built around their knowledge. I don't believe HR particularly has. And there is someone called CJ who has just liked the live stream post, and her company is doing amazing things, enabling people to have better HR conversations through technology. Don't have to sit and do an exam, which you only need 50% to pass. Like, there are people already doing this, and essentially, I think SHRM and CIPD have little flickers of flames at the bottom, and it will just take a little bit of fuel, and the whole thing will go up. And to your point, they're doing a pretty good job of shooting themselves in the foot anyway.
Ooh.
Oh, that is a question. That is a great there's next week's topic. Actually, we were talking before. We need next week's topic. Let's make that next week's topic because we have got 14 minutes, and I cannot answer that in 14 minutes. But will ChatGPT replace Wikipedia? Join us next week because that's the question we're going to be answering. Yes, it's going to probably be my answer, but there's a whole thing to investigate there.
But it's going to be using Wikipedia as its source for replacing it, right?
Well, it's predicated on user input, right? So, anyway, let's figure that out. But like, SHRM seem to be shooting them. Where were we? SHRM are shooting themselves in the foot, left, right, and center, making the incredibly dumb decisions about quite basic things. What happens when you give them something difficult to handle? How are they gonna tackle that? Like AI, for example, if they can't even handle like the legal process of racial discrimination inside their organization, if they can't even get that right, how are they going to, and which has been around for decades, how are you going to get ChatGPT and AI right that's been around for a couple of years? Sorry, I'm shouting, and now Anna. Hello, Anna. Conflict capable solutions in Minneapolis. I've been to Minneapolis. It's a lovely place.
So I want to go back in history a little bit with what the drama was last year when I was studying for the test, which was that SHRM specifically started shaming employees for wanting to be able to work remotely or hybrid. And then they actually fired people, and Johnny C. Taylor bragged about hiring offshore workers to replace them. Does anyone else remember that little fun ditty that happened about a year and a half ago?
So the article that you sent me before we had this call had a direct link to that article. So I literally have just read that article. Go, oh, okay, you're absolutely. You're crackers, as I would say here in the UK. It just doesn't make sense. And like, you can get away with it in read that because absolutely. It's just like knowledge does not equal competency. There's a formula there. We should write a formula. Knowledge plus skill. Anyway, what was I saying? I was just about to say something.
You were talking about the article that was linked in the article you read.
Yeah, right. That's it. So even if that was an organization that has nothing to do with being an industry body, if that was just like a supermarket, you kind of go, well, that's a shitty thing to do, but you're a supermarket and no one's really looking up to you as the benchmark for being the best supermarket. You are a big corporate machine there to make money, blah, 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 blah. That makes sense. Now, when you get yourself into a position of power where you are surveying the lay of the land and telling everybody how to do stuff, you all of a sudden elevate you into a situation where you're way above a normal corporate. So you have to act even better than a corporate already does. That's difficult. I'm not going to say it's easy, but also if you can't do it, then don't do it. Don't like surely they must have a PR department who reads this stuff and go, maybe maybe Johnny C. Taylor shouldn't say this because it'll make us look bad and we'll lose money like every other company would do. But like I
His
say,
ego is way too big for that. Like, I feel like he would have the same problem that Elon does. Of like, you tell me not to say something, I'm gonna double down on that because he thinks he's better and knows everything.
I'm not going to agree with anything Elon Musk does or doesn't do, but he can kind of get away with it because he answers to shareholders and himself. Yeah. He answers to himself and possibly shareholders. But SHRM doesn't have to answer to itself as an organization, but has to answer for the whole flipping industry.
Yeah.
And therefore, you can't just walk into that role and go, I'm going to be a CEO of SHRM because I've been a CEO before or anything like this. Like, you got to have a pretty good working knowledge, not necessarily the industry. You've passed your test, 51% on all of them. Well done. But you've also got to know, you're like a politician almost. Yeah. I mean, it's probably not a good time to talk about politics, but you're almost in that position where like there is that not democratic, that like democratization, that approach to be able to say this is where we're going and why. But the industry, forgive me if I'm wrong, but the HR industry in the US doesn't go, oh, we all voted for Johnny C. Taylor to be the guiding light for our industry. It just happened.
Pretty sure. Someone in the chat could probably give a better explanation.
Like, surely members have to vote on that, maybe? Like they would have to do for a political party?
He's a CEO, so I doubt it. But if someone voted for him, like, or knows about that process, please confirm. But I think that that's a really good segue into the drama from last week, what you were just talking about with answering for an entire industry. That's the problem that they have right now with their wrongful termination suit that came out last week, right? Is they're not only being held accountable as an individual employer who made a dumb decision as far as wrongfully terminating someone as far as retaliation goes for whistleblowing, they are being held accountable for being the ones telling other people what to do and not following their own advice, which is so beautiful. And I'm so excited to see that they're being held accountable to the standards that they're creating, even if they're not specifically,
It feels like a medieval fairy tale. Like
it does.
I think you vote for the board, maybe. Let's have a look into that because it'd be really good to quantify like what that process is. Because if you can vote to have someone in, you can sure as hell should be able to vote someone out as well, or a vote of no confidence. I don't know the guy. I'm not saying, and I probably have no skin in the game because I ain't SHRM. I'm not a SHRM member. It won't surprise you, and I'm probably never going to be. Even if I put an application in now, it's probably going to get knocked back pretty swiftly.
I don't know. They approved me. You're probably fine.
Okay. Keep your friends close, but keep your enemies closer. And as long as your enemies are paying you a bag of cash, then we're probably okay.
So I want to go back to that for just a second. So we've talked about this. You know this. I only did it because I wanted a higher certification than most of the people that are telling me that I'm too out there, right? Like I want to be able to say, look, I have the same knowledge that you do, or I passed the same test, or I passed a harder test than you did. So clearly I have an idea what I'm talking about in this arena. But studying for it actually got me really, really excited about HR for what it could be if we were actually strategic and guiding our companies with any of the principles that are supposedly the standard and what's expected of a company, which I thought was really interesting. And I didn't really expect it. I expected a lot of, I don't know, legal information and basic ideas around, I don't know, compliance, I guess, because there's so much compliance talk. And so it was really fun to see, oh, wait, we can actually have conversations about strategic HR and we can tell people that they should be being strategic. We're just not supporting them in how to actually develop the skill set to create strategic initiatives within the organization. Those people are coming from other places within the business and applying the knowledge they've built from other skill sets. And that's how we're getting progress.
Well, and quite so. My business partner Emily messaged me. She was just on a call with someone who works at an underwear company and was like buzzing. She's like, "Oh, these people, this HR department, are actually doing something fundamentally different in terms of they're actually being strategic partners rather than doing partners. And it's like, cool. So surely that HR team over there has way more value to add to the industry than SHRM, who's only protecting the houses that it already has. Now, you could argue then that person should be part of SHRM and then they inform into that process and all that kind of stuff. But I'm like, actually, conferences do a pretty good job of some conferences do a pretty good job of finding awesome people at doing them awesome stuff and getting them on stage and like get that person on stage and get them to talk to the industry about what they're doing, because it's way more practical. It isn't theoretical. You don't need a test to access that case study about how we can do things quicker. How we can do things better, and therefore then that happens quicker because you're just using the vehicles of what already exists. You don't have to create a knowledge framework and a learning management system and a series of exams. Are we not beyond exams now in the world? It feels like we probably are going there pretty quickly. Like, our exam, no one likes them, and they just
My husband does. There are some people who enjoy it, but that's like,
yeah, probably because they're good at them. Like it's like and obviously there are different types of exams, right? There are like literally just answer this question: what is the right or wrong answer, or provide an essay, blah 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 blah, and that makes a little bit more sense to me. But it just doesn't. It feels like the whole framework of everything that they're trying to achieve is just a little bit wacky.
Well, I think what we're seeing is the rise of micro certifications.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've seen that too. But instead of saying, hey, I'm going to go after the CP, the SCP, the PHR, SPHR, I'm just going to get certifications in these little, very specific areas, which I think, I mean, you could do a lot of really fun things if you want to learn about some specific niche areas that apply to the type of HR work that you specifically are doing. So I think that that's one thing. But Dara, like who's been commenting in our chat, thank you. We've talked about this. There's a lot of people who are choosing to go toward like master's degrees. They're getting MBAs, and that's how they're progressing their career, is through more traditional education, which I would love to know from someone who works in a team that's done that and also has a lot of people who are homegrown, who've just been upskilling themselves, who's getting there faster. Because I think there's, obviously right now in the US specifically, there's a lot of conversations being had about traditional education routes and whether or not they're interested. So I think the rise of the micro certification is interesting because, one, it's a lot more financially approachable. Time is such a huge resource and detriment right now, where you can do it quicker and get into what you need. But to your point, maybe it's just you go to conferences with the right people speaking for the right things that you need, and then you build individual relationships and you have access to cool things that they can provide you with in their very niche area because they're specialists.
Micro qualifications is an interesting one. Let's another future topic as well, right? Because go back to I think the first point I made, that to update a micro qualification is probably quicker and easier than updating a 3-year qualification. Let's say, like, I'm not saying the idea of updating a degree level qualification must take a hell of a lot of effort and a hell of a lot of time to do. But if it's taking that much time to do, and then by the time you deliver it's out of date, then shouldn't you stop doing it? That is the sheer definition of insanity, to try and keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. So micro qualifications, are they the future, ? And then all the other options that we've explored. Let's make that a topic as well. But Callie, I know that you have what we call in the corporate world a hard stop on the hour. So I can't give you a minute back, but we can ensure that the hard stop happens and you get to your next call. Final thoughts?
Run fast and far from SHRM.
And I would say SHRM rhymes with worm, and they are both trying to wriggle themselves out of tight situations. And with that, we're gonna go. See you all next week, everybody. Bye bye.
See you next week.